You're listening to the Wanderlust Swingers podcast with Aussie hosts Kate and Daryl. If you're curious about exploring your sexuality or the swinging, hot wifing and non-monogamous lifestyle, you've definitely come to the right podcast. Or maybe you just love travel adventures. Either way, we share our personal, sometimes juicy, sexy stories as well as swingers club and event reviews, interviews with other sassy people, and of course our global swinging adventures. We try to bring you a look into the diverse lifestyle that the swinging and non-monogamous community has. We hope you enjoy. Now let's get into the episode. G'day guys and welcome back to an episode of Wanderlust Swingers podcast. This is part 2 of the Swingers Q&A volume 3.
I think my introduction is much better than your introduction.
Kate and Daryl here, and we are joined by the lovely Mr. and Mrs. H from the Bed Hoppers podcast, the most famous, infamous and extraordinary swingers in the UK, Mr. and Mrs. H.
It's us!
Actually, I think they're the second.
Second.
Or third. It depends on whether Yoda has been involved in swinging or not.
When 900 years of swinging you have done, be as famous as you or not, hey?
I think we know the 5th most famous.
I believe that, is it like based on the number of like bedposts you've notched?
No, it's just the
It's
number.
by tonnage, I think we discussed that before.
Oh yeah, metric tonnage.
No, it's neither of those things.
Tonnage?
No,
Tonnage.
it's the amount of self-adoration.
Oh, I've done a lot of that.
No, not self-molestation. That's a different thing.
So if you missed part 1, go and check it out on the Bed Hoppers podcast. We are continuing our
Or
Q&A.
if you don't like the bed hoppers, don't.
Well, then you probably should just tune out.
I mean, we're fairly mediocre, really. So.
Well, I mean, you're number 2 in the UK, the second most famous swingers in the UK.
This is true, we are.
So go ahead and check out the Bed Hoppers podcast for the first part of this podcast, but
First half, one might say.
first half. So we are continuing questions from the Marvel US Vixen. Next question, we just got off of like jealousy and emotions. Next one is, have you ever had to step back a bit from the lifestyles? Marvel US Vixen has really got us like digging down deep into the emotions side of the lifestyle, but have you ever had to step back a bit from the lifestyle?
Well, we had to when COVID hit. There was a natural break in.
A government enforced
Yeah,
one.
government enforced like hiatus thanks to the global pandemic. So that.
I don't feel like that was part of the question. Just
No.
throwing that out there.
Well, we had to. We had
Yeah.
to stop.
I think it was a measure of, can we survive without the lifestyle?
Yeah.
And the answer was, yes, we can, but we still like all of our lifestyle friends.
Yeah.
So the fact that they were still around and we were still chatting to them, but we couldn't physically interact was, I don't know why I've gone with this strange, smashy and nicey voice while I've answered this particular question, but thank you for joining me today. But honestly, I think it was a case of, I do love the BBC.
And I mean that in the traditional sense. For those of you who are thinking that I'm being very weird,
British Broadcasting Company.
exactly,
They're not
that's what I
corporations.
was.
Oh well.
You don't need to know. That's why they call it BBC.
That's right. And I went a bit Australian then, which is even weirder. But honestly, I think we found that we could take a step back. And I think even when we went, in fact, when we went to Desire and we met you folks for the very first time in person, we got halfway through the week and we did step back for a period. And we took sort of like an afternoon to reflect.
It was only
and
one
chill
evening though.
Yeah, but I think one of the things we've found as we've gone through this journey is
We stepped back for about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And
sometimes 15 minutes is all you need. But it was the fact that we recognised that it was all a bit much and that we needed to make time for each other. And that felt within the concept of being at that resort for that week, which is quite hardcore.
Yeah.
It felt really important to come away from it and survive by ourselves for a little bit.
we had a reasonably sturdy, passionate conversation about this recently, actually. Maybe 6 months ago, where I wished to step back from the lifestyle for some time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was it more than 15 minutes?
Yes.
More than an evening?
Young Kate did not agree with that at the time.
Who is this young Kate?
Actually,
Fuck off.
Tell us more, Daryl. I'm intrigued. Why did you step back?
so I think we're running at different paces at the moment, Kate.
Oh,
and I.
don't foreshadow.
I don't give a fuck. I'm not reading the questions. It's your job to sort out when I fuck up the questions.
Okay,
It's
good.
not mine.
Carry on.
There's a pace difference between us because during the pandemic, as an example, we'd stopped again, enforced stop. But post-pandemic or post-reopening, Kate has been much more engaged in the lifestyle because of both her business and also just a more consistent return to places and people that we know than I have, which means we're running at a different pace. I feel very outside of the lifestyle right now. And I feel very remote from it as well, because a lot of the people we know are not here. And I have a significant problem with that. And to the point where at one point I just said, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't wish to be involved in something that I'm not involved in. And I feel like on a podcast that I am actually a imposter on that podcast, because I'm not involved and I'm not engaged with the lifestyle, because I'm busily doing other things whilst Kate's involved in it and engaged, but not engaged locally, so that I can at least at a weekend or, every now and again be involved here locally, so I understand that I'm still a part of this. So it got to a point for me where I said, I don't think I wish to do this anymore. We need to slow down. And, the immediate response from Kate was more of, well, so you need me to shut down my business. That's where it went, which was a very interesting reaction for me, and something we negotiated through, of course. Well, of course, yes, we did. But it's still something that is that weighs on me every time we go to a club, for example, because I'm not, in many cases, in the mood to go anymore, because I don't know whether I want to be there or want to be engaged with what's happening. So it is an ongoing conversation. It's not something that's particularly sticky for the friends that we have and have always had. That won't change. That part of the lifestyle journey is still very honest and true for me. But it's the look forward. How do I want to be involved in this in future? And, I'll let you know. But it may not be. I mean, it may be, it may not be. But that's not going to change, again, the historic relationships, just change the way I, and hence we, look at it moving forward.
Are you actively still sitting back from new encounters?
No, actually the opposite. So my biggest issue is that there's nothing, that there's nobody, we don't have local friends. So one of the things Kate mentioned in the previous episode is that she loves to have be punched in the face. See, I got that back in. Now, one of the things she mentioned in the previous episode was that we're getting closer and closer to the people we care about in terms of where they are in some ways, but we're also getting further and further away from some of the other people we care about. So we're kind of in this sort of middle ground where people are close but not close enough where you can have just a weekend at the pub or a day at the pub with them, right? Versus what I really enjoy is a relatively consistent interaction. The more consistency there is to the relationship, the more interested I am in people. That's just the facts of it, right?
Because you like those deeper conversations and understanding more about people.
It's not just the deeper conversations. I set a fairly stringent rule for our wedding that if we hadn't spoken to them in 6 months, they weren't coming. Because it was, to me, if you're outside of 6 months and you haven't flicked a text message to somebody, then how deep is the relationship, right? And the lifestyle relationships inherently are quite deep because they involve things that you're giving to people that you normally wouldn't give away outside of your relationship. So with that in mind, it becomes, the longer we're away from somebody, for me, the tougher it is for me to be interested, because it's just inherent that they have other things going on in their lives and they're doing things that I don't know about, and I just feel not part of their ongoing life.
What about you two? Have you ever stepped back from the lifestyle?
Interesting. So maybe not in quite the same way as Daryl's describing, around having very different expectations and outputs. What we do, we're fairly joined up on that. It's more been life events that have maybe forced us to take a step back because of just life more than our misaligned attitude. Probably fair, because we're generally on the same page with, are we still getting enough out of this to want to carry on? And yes, we both are, and we regularly check in with each other to say, you still okay? We all good? You good? But that's fine. So it's more been things like life events that may have to reevaluate. Can we put energy in? I think we're probably less inclined at the moment to find space for new relationships and new encounters, because we've got so much catching up to do with existing ones that it's actually more fun to be rekindling those and seeing people we belong than it is to find new ones.
But that does make you, I guess, back to Daryl's point earlier, that does make you significantly more out of practice. If you're so used to going to events or being around your tribe, just consistently moving like a like a tribe around all these things. When you're on your own and separated from that tribe, it makes you very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And we found that at PCAP, that was one of the things that we've talked about a lot, was that we felt very out of practice of meeting new people and building those connections. Not so much just chatting to new people, because we're social and we can do that, but actually bringing people into the collective, if you want to call it that.
Collective, the Borg.
We will assimilate them. We've got the technology.
We've found great people that we love and have taken along for the ride along the way. Brilliant. And as you say, finding new people and faces to join that sounds a bit cultish. It's really not. It's more like-minded individuals. Is difficult because you need to invest the time into building that. So I think sometimes it's just more important to me to rekindle and reintegrate with existing ones than actually, well, there's a reason to find a new one. There isn't really a reason to find. I'm happy with revisiting the ones that we've already got and just have missed, maybe. I think that's fair. So it's not about us sitting back from it, more making sure that we reinvest the ones that matter.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. Have you ever felt that your partner is running 6 steps ahead of you and you are feeling left out?
Left out is not the word. I mean, so yes, running in front, or yes, absolutely. Feeling it at the moment, in fact. Like that is the descriptor of today. Not today as in today, but certainly current events for me. That, Kate is very much running in front of where I would like to be. But that's not, I mean, there's been discussions around this along the way as well. So it's not, I certainly hope it's no surprise to Kate that I would say that out loud, given that we've discussed this as well. So, yeah, I mean, answer done. I don't know what else to add to that. I've already covered all the other shit before.
We talked quite a bit about this pace issue that we've kind of hinted at all the way through, this foreshadowing you talk about, because sometimes, whether you realise it or not, the pace isn't quite matching each other. And that's not always because one of you is more invested than the other, I think, into what you're doing. It's more maybe levels of confidence and levels of how much you're feeling your body image. It could be a whole number of factors influencing how fast you're moving into things, and your partner isn't maybe at the same pace as you are.
I think, like you say, pace can be measured in a variety of different ways. And I think typically I'm the one that does all the admin, for example. So it feels that constantly I'm the one that's pushing it because I'm the one that's doing that admin part and coming up with the ideas and the suggestions. By the same token, often at a meet, you're often running more ahead than I am because you're more confident in accelerating that way. So it does even itself out, I suppose. Yeah. But again, different relationships feel different, and sometimes there are people where I'm more confident being more forwards, and sometimes there's people where you're.
Would you say sometimes the pace is mismatched because you're not both feeling the same level of attraction for all the parties?
Yeah, I'd say that's there. I think being in practice, Daryl's mentioned, makes a huge difference as well, and being, just feeling like you're part of it. Because I think if I think back to pre-COVID times, I kind of felt like I was getting into the swing of it and getting, I had a flow, a pattern, a banter or whatever that I could apply. Yeah, everyone, you get the same template. Sorry, no one is special. But but it was, roughly what the scope of things are going to be, and you know how they're going to go, and you can ride that more effectively. Whereas now I don't feel like I'm practiced and well rehearsed in that, so therefore I'm a little bit more cautious, I suppose, because I'm not so good at. I was never good at reading signs, but I'm even worse at it now.
Our collective pace has slowed down, definitely, because, like we said the other day, we are out of practice in meeting people that we haven't met before, purely because we've just not had to do it, and we've not had the scope to do it. So we were like a fish out of water, really, weren't we? Like, what do we do? How do we do this again? I can't remember even how to make it clear to someone that I want to flow with them.
But also there is the convenience of people that you already know. There comes a whole load of other trappings with that, but if you're comfortable with your group of friends or playmates or whatever, then it's almost a no-brainer. You can understand how things are going to go because you know how it's worked in the past. Whereas finding new people is a lot of high maintenance and effort and selective processes and interneting and whatnot.
Fabmin.
Yeah, fabmin. Exactly that.
Kate, how do you feel about the pace issue that Daryl was just...
So I think there's 2 steps to this. to flip it on its head, not running ahead, but I do find sometimes that I feel like he's running behind a little bit in terms of like just engagement in life. It's kind of exactly what he said, mirroring that, but from my perspective. But what I do find is that when we're at a meet or at a club, I feel like he is running 6 steps ahead of me in terms of like just being out there. Yeah, we were at a club a couple of weeks ago and he was just like bull at a gate, just charge. And I was a little bit more reserved in terms of like I just want to kind of feel out the environment, feel out these people, because it was literally walked in, went to have some food, found a couple, sat down next to that couple because that was the only seats in the house, and then spent that time with that couple. And then I think he was more of a bull at a gate and I was a bit more of a...
In what regard? Like
you seemed to really enjoy them and you were like, okay, I think these guys are great, and you were just like pretty much...
No?
Again,
Nope.
Perception, I guess.
Nope.
Do you know the people I'm talking about?
Yep.
Okay.
They were lovely, but I mean, they were lovely. They were sweet. They were nice. It was their very first time they'd been at a club.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if your perception of me running forward there is that I wish to have sex with them immediately, I would have picked a different couple.
Really?
It's their first time at an event. The chances of having sex with them is basically 0.
Okay, well...
Yeah, I mean, I'm not fucking hell. I'm not an idiot.
Well, irregardless, come on. You're better than that. I'm actually not. I think that when we're physically at a place, so I think all of the pre-bits and pieces and bits and bobs and like the planning and going to a club and everything, and then we get there and Daryl's tends to be a bit more forward than I am.
Do you find that one of you is more...
If you say the gas and the brake, I'm going to not give you any more wine. You know, the whole analogy of like, somebody the gas and somebody's the brake.
No,
There is
I've never
nobody
heard
in this
that
room who's
analogy.
American. Could we just use throttle as we all would in our own native tongues?
Would accelerator be okay?
Accelerator's fine as well. Yeah, accelerator, throttle,
And the stop mechanism.
and the brakey brake.
Brake.
I was going to ask, is one of you more forward than the other in showing someone that you're or flirting with someone or showing
You
someone
need
that you're
to
interested
ask this.
Well, the listeners might not know.
I mean, you could just point if you like, and then say he is much more forward and touchy than the other two that we had a discussion about yesterday, where they felt attacked. I might add.
Yes.
On the fact that we
were not.
We're occasionally surprised that they end up in bed together, given that it seems like they've just tripped over and fallen on each other.
Hang on. I distinctly recall being attacked with... At one point, we were next to each other and these two pointed towards us, Kate, didn't they? And said, look, they're touching.
Yes.
That was... And that was like a massive leap forward.
You did. That was the hilarity of it. You sprang apart like 2 chipmunks in the headlights of a gas-powered car.
To answer your questions, fuckheads.
Hey, my question was valid. It was not an attack.
Pointed, but valid.
It wasn't pointed. It was actually really subtle because it was for the listeners to get involved.
They don't know.
Yeah,
they weren't having wine and tapas with us
If you
yesterday.
want to understand who was attacking here, apparently it was me, because that was very subtle, and I just went, fucking Jesus, just point at the people you're talking about.
A couple of
here.
things. I think this goes back to your affirmation style as well. So kind of what we spoke about 10 episodes ago, roughly. So there are times when
Pretty sure I was drunk.
No, you were getting angry at me from citing references.
Oh, I hate that. Yeah, don't do that.
There are times when I'm a little bit more forward. It depends on how I'm feeling, but there's also times when, and that
Citations
would be
are in the show notes.
more specifically, like 80% of the time, when my style of affirmation is that I want to feel wanted.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily that, it depends. So again, 80-20. There's 20% where I'm actively like pursuing and very aggressive about that pursuing, and that doesn't mean...
pursuing, wow.
But that doesn't mean that I find that person more interesting or more attractive. It's got nothing to do with that. It's then the times when
Sorry, you used the term aggressively pursuing. I'm just curious as to when this aggressive pursuance has occurred. And with whom? And who... So,
this is my turn to talk. When it's really nice, again, that whole style of affirmation, when I'm on the receiving end of that. And I think the situation with Mr. H and I is that he is also of the same mindset. So you've got these
100%.
two people that are of this like
Both need to feel that they're wanted.
attachment style and affirmation style, that it's the constant push and pull.
So you're both too stubborn to show the other you're interested because you both want to feel
It's not
pursued.
stubbornness.
It's almost a politeness. It's a you go first.
Can you please
But it's also you want the
not
other person-
attack them again?
I will flip a table. Marvel US Vixen will be very happy about my flipping of said table. That's my answer. Are we done? Are we moving on to the next question?
I'm really confused, but fine.
So standard Monday then.
I've never known someone
I think I just learned
not
something
answer the
about
question.
myself.
I just learned something about myself.
Okay, Mrs. L said, I would really love to hear more about cultural differences, especially as you all come from different countries, yet have been to some of the same places.
Should we talk about the cultural differences of affirmation? Because I still don't think she's answered that question.
What is it you want to know?
It's fine. She's not going to answer me because it's confusing and you both just...
I fucking answered you.
Okay,
Daryl's face was a picture. I don't think his mouth could be open anymore. He was like, what?
I think it was just the term aggressive
Pursuance.
that I'm like, I mean, I'm reaching out. Just let me ask this question to the 3 metric tons of sexual partners we've had. Metric tons now,
Yeah,
so not imperial. So for those of you out there that are using the imperial system, break out your calculator. For the 3 metric tons of people that we've been involved with sexually since we've been in the lifestyle, could one of you, any of you who've been aggressively pursued, I'd be really interested in you reaching out to us to help me understand when this aggressive pursuance occurred.
I think Kate aggressively pursued me when we were playing Mario Party, and she was about 3 spaces behind. And then she lost, and I think she was going to destroy our room.
I think that's about right now.
I think that happened.
Yeah.
And there was champagne involved.
Okay, so on to the next question.
Yes, sorry, Mrs. L.
I really love to hear
Cultural
more about
differences.
cultural differences, especially since all of you come from different countries yet have been in the same places.
I think so. Going to PCAP, we noticed a whole load of cultural differences between the UK and so even down to things like where people had hotel rooms, they would invite people into the rooms and decorate them and just
Oh, yeah.
do this whole sort of room crawl thing.
Didn't even occur to us.
Yeah, that I don't think we've seen that. Purely hotel things aren't a thing in the
So
UK.
you don't decorate your room if you go on you don't do like lights and diffusers
No,
and
'cause
drinks and...
This is a hotel room.
Because, yeah, the hotel would be like,
Decorate that.
what the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing that? And chances are house cleaning would have turned up and torn it all
I
down.
entirely agree with your perception here.
I'm all about it. I like it.
This is what I'm about to say. You want to know who's changed their perception on the way through this lifestyle? Yeah, because somebody spent, I think, a little more time in the US than we have.
I think it shows interest.
I liked it.
I like it. I just didn't know it was a thing.
Fun, but culturally, if we were to try and do that over here, I think we'd be met. Say over here, over in the UK, I think we'd be met.
Yes, that's right, because Brexit.
Yeah, exactly. Something that we're incredibly
Deadpan.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder. But I don't think we'd sell it or be able to sell it. I think there's also an interesting thing about money in the UK and the way people are happy to invest in an experience. I think that is probably it's a bit more of a struggle to get people to do that.
But what about approaches? Do you find that people in, say, America were similar-minded in terms of talking to you, getting to know you before in the bed versus, say, like the European, which is like, sex first, touch first, and maybe ask later a little bit?
I don't. So given Brexit for starters, not European. So just saying
I know.
that, but also not European. I think we can all agree, sitting in this room in the Netherlands, that just across the water is the UK, but you couldn't be further away in terms of how the attitude
No, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
So I this is the reason I'm saying this, because I think but you have to be careful that when you proposition this, you don't make it look as though Mr. and Mrs. H speak for Europe, because the UK is a very different place to the rest of Europe.
What are the differences here versus there versus America? Like, I think that probably
You didn't
America...
say that here, there,
I did. I said America, I think, is probably more
Can
similar
we
to
play
the
back the
UK.
recording?
We could do if we could be bothered, but
We're not going
We're
to.
not bothered. Generally, I think that there is a bit of a rock up and fuck approach across the UK. And I think that's made it particularly difficult for us to find people that we're interested in, because the vast swathes of people on Fab being the biggest site over there, are very much hey, yeah, let's meet and go straight into a fuck situation.
It's like, hey, you free tonight?
Yeah.
No.
So and that feels quite different to what we've experienced in the US. That said, our experience in the US has been in smaller groups. It's been things like takeovers, of which you've been involved in many, Kate.
And I think it's also it's been tailored because we're not stepping on a plane from here to fly to the US, which is, I mean, granted, 9 hours minimum, right?
Yeah.
From here to there, and spending the amount of money that's required to get there without us going to an event that we believe will be a group of people that we actually like, which means I think we kind of self-police that. Right? We don't. There's events that we've all agreed now we'll never go to again, that we've been to, well, that you and I have been to in the past, that don't fit with that.
No, they don't fit with that.
Yeah. So, you know, when you're not morally, if
sound or care.
Yeah, then you just, that group of people or that event or that place is not something that you'll ever go back to.
So with that happy note and keeping that in mind, I think some of it is around the groups of people that you hang around with rather than the overall culture of the place, because there's going to be people that align to your thought process or whatever. It's just finding them and getting them in the right place.
But I do think if you take, again, the vast majority of people, if you look at people in Australia and the way they approach the lifestyle, I think if you look at people in the UK and the Americas, I think they're pretty similar styles. What I find very different is people in Europe.
Yep.
So when we went to a club in Spain for the first time, I feel like six and a half years ago, we were shocked at the fact that we went in and instantly, basically, people were like just touching me. And they were like, hey, let's go to the playroom. And at the time I was like, Jesus, I don't even know your name. Like, I don't know or if our lifestyle aligns at all. And I found that to be really interesting. And we've seen that kind of through Paris. We've seen that in Paris. We've seen that here in the Netherlands, absolutely. In various places. We saw it at Cap d'Agde, of course, in France. Like, it is very, very different to the approaches that I think people in the Americas, the UK and Australia have, by and large. Of course, there's going to be exceptions to that where, like you said before, people on Fab are like, let's go, you know, anal fist in the park and go dogging. We got a dogging message like 2 days ago on Fab.
Anal fisting in the park.
This is the aggressive pursuance she was talking about. Aggressively pursuing
apparently Kate
anal
is
fisting.
anal fisting people in the park.
So I think there are, you know, obviously there's the exception. By and large, I think that Australians, people from the UK and Americans probably tend to
anal fist people in the park.
Approach things very similar. And then you've got people from Europe and then obviously people from Asia Pacific as well that are slightly different.
How interesting. So a few years back, if we were going to look at something a bit erotic to watch, in the days when we used to have our little sex den, we used to bring down some duvets from stairs and grab a bottle of champagne.
A porn nest.
Right. Okay, whatever you want to call it.
It's a porn nest.
Yeah.
Typically, if Miss Rachel had been like, oh, what do you fancy watching? My response would not have been like, oh, let's just get some porn from whatever. I would go, oh, a bit of world cinema, and you bet your bottom dollar it would be French. And for some reason, I always assume that French is synonymous with like some erotic kind of
classy porn.
Yeah, like, oh, that's the kind of porn I want to watch.
Which is what I recommended Marc Dorcel to you last night.
Right? Mm-hmm. So you kind of go, oh, the French know how to fucking do it. Like, that's, for me, almost like a world cinema erotic kind of subset
But could you take the way that you approach the lifestyle and could you put yourself in those circumstances in France where it's just a very...
It just feels fucking nice, right?
No, but
like,
I think in that situation, you would probably fare better than I would, but you'd still be freaked the fuck out. I think you would. It's very touch and then you remove the hand.
Well, but possibly part of that is because I've become accustomed to the more consent-driven ways that we do things and like to do. But when the French portray it in an erotic visual aid, you kind of don't really see it like that. You just get swept away.
Yeah, but there's a difference between world cinema and going to Cap d'Agde.
And what you don't see in the French erotic literature and visual aids is that they're having the consent beforehand, maybe. Let's just assume it's done.
No, I think you're missing a beat here. Possibly.
I think what I'm getting at is when I think about eroticism and that kind of the visual stimulants that come with that, my mind always wanders to French world cinema.
Okay. But
you're talking about cultural differences.
yes, we're talking about cultural differences, but that's cinema. But in terms of the actual going there and going to a club, the concept
I haven't been to a French club. Maybe
no,
should
but
go
we
there.
have heard about other people going to a club, and Kate's just described that it's very much hands-on. It's very much consent is less
Okay.
outright.
That's the focus, right?
It's more implied, less in.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think, and we discussed implied. I've discussed implied consent in the past in our podcast around dark rooms, for example, where if you walk into a dark room is known to have sexual
One of the
activities
reasons why
in
we
it,
won't have one ever.
It's an implied consent scenario, which can be dangerous, very dangerous, right? It depends on whether whether you have a group of people who are just interested in implied consent rather than verbal consent.
Kind of
To be
like
fair,
phone
we've
party.
also seen Kate navigate a room with light in it, and the thought of a dark room with Kate in it scares the shit out of me. How much stuff would be broken and
Good
destroyed?
point. Good point. No, it's pretty true. What?
Now she looks
either you
attacked
kill
again.
yourself of tripping over something.
My head does hurt.
Yeah, I know your head hurts because you ran into our rafters this morning, after I'm getting into bed last night, and Kate's like, oh, watch your head, don't hit it on the rafters.
I was
She
being
gets
very
up this
loving.
morning and goes, belt, and the whole fucking house shook, basically. And then she went, oh, I've hurt my head.
But when you think about these sorts of circumstances, so say you were in a really sexy French club and, argument's sake, you thought everybody was in there was very attractive, both of you.
Okay.
You walk in and instantly people are just on you, and then you're involved in a play session. Do you think that, again, everyone's attractive, you fancy everybody, been not a lot of conversation? Do you think you'd fare okay in that kind of club situation where people were just like, okay, let's go play, and they just kind of got on you? And
I suspect I would not, and that she probably would do.
That's probably a fair assessment.
I think that's fair.
I think you're probably right. Yeah.
I think you're much happier in the moment
Yeah, I would agree.
and going with it. Equally, you care less about saying no, I think.
I care less about saying no.
Yeah, you don't really, you just kind of go with the thing, and then you'll worry about it afterwards that you're not so happy about.
I'm also quite fussy though.
Yes, but I think if you're in the moment, then less of a problem. J'accuse, Mrs. H, j'accuse.
yeah. So I think to answer this question very broadly, like every place has very different approaches to the lifestyle, and I think that
Not every place. I think every place needs its own assessment in terms of what the lifestyle means to them,
what you're comfortable.
what you're comfortable with dealing with versus what the local standard is.
It's a thrilling mix of you, the club, and the people.
Okay, next one from Mrs. L. How do you keep those long-distance friendships that you make on your travels from dwindling over time?
Zoom, zoom. Lots of zooms. Actually, you can't answer it. It's a zoom.
I think there
It
is-
helps.
I think that helps. I think it's very difficult to keep relationships going over a long distance.
It is.
Just a regular long distance relationship is tough, but when you're talking about other partners, it's a step removed from it. I think you can invest in it, and you can set dates that you've got to look forward to. That helps tremendously by saying, okay, we might not see each other for a year, but we know at the end of that year that we will catch up.
Yeah.
I think that helps you invest in the chat and the contact and all that other stuff. But I think every relationship, by its very nature, sort of dwindles a little bit if you don't have contact. You can't help that.
Yep, totally agree.
Yeah. You
Very
need
hard
to
to
have.
keep anything alive when you don't feed it.
Yeah.
You do need to have something to look forward to.
Yep.
And if that, albeit is a date, as you say, sort of 8 months in the future, and you say, let's commit to this date, let's do something, and you you have that in your mind, don't you? You want to work towards.
And I think there are people that we've played with that we thought, wow, that's great. It was a really good play session or really good interaction or experience or whatever. And yeah, it'd be lovely to catch up with them again, but we just haven't for years.
So to carry on from that, say you had sex with somebody who was maybe, I'm going to say 3 hours away driving in the UK. What makes you not go for constant contact and the reaching out? Is it life? Is it just that you didn't think there was enough of a connection there?
Yeah, I think it's all of those things.
That you weren't being aggressively pursued enough?
We know that feeling well, Kate, right? I'm going to not aggressively pursue you.
You poor delicate of flowers.
Email will be in the show notes for anyone of the 3 ton people. Please reach out when Kate has aggressively pursued you.
There is something around the, how much investment you want to put in for that relationship, how much can you pursue it? Does life get in the way? And there's people we've met in the States that that we consider really great friends that we just haven't chatted to for quite a while.
But they're in the States.
And that's a huge distance. And when you go back there, you can't see every fucker. You just can't. And it pains me because, there are people we met at the Desire when we met you folks, and I'm like, oh, it'd be really nice to catch up with them. You know what? Like, we can't always make it happen. Yeah. And there's cost, there's investment, there's aligning diaries. I mean, it's hard to align diaries with people that live an hour up the road.
And additionally, for me, I do not want every one of our holidays to be a lifestyle holiday.
And that's fair.
I'm not interested in that being my entire life view. That it's just that, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't. So that means not going to, every time we go to the US, it doesn't mean that we won't catch up with people that we like and invested in lifestyle wise. But I've experienced probably 5% of what is available globally that I wish to experience.
And we've been to how many countries?
A lot. Anyway, but with that in mind, I have to allot some space for doing things so that when I get to my midlife crisis, I don't need to buy a Ferrari. Right? I want to have done enough that I can look back and happily say I'm satisfied with what I've done till now. And that's not just lifestyle things. That's just a portion of my life. I've got many other things that, that float my boat, excite me, scare me. All those sorts of things are important to have a balanced life. If you don't, we fell into this in the first 6 months of this journey. We went to a lifestyle club every weekend.
Almost every weekend. Yeah.
Almost every weekend for 6 months. It's too much. You lose yourself. You also gain a fuck ton of weight because, you're drinking profusely every weekend and eating as well. So there was a whole lot of downside to that. I think it's really important that you keep a balanced outlook on life. And in some cases, that balance needs to swing from one side to the other, in that I really think we need to invest more time in our lifestyle journey here in this country. Here, or I should say locally, rather than here in this country, but locally, where we have people that we can hang out with on a weekend.
Yes, because I think when you look at Europe and everything, especially like in Sydney, we would have friends that were an hour and a half away. Here, that's a flight, and that's okay too. It's just the ability to connect
and it's the ability to continually connect and catch up every few months even, to actually have a conversation and learn about how people's lives are going and the things that are, and just get inspired to be part of somebody's life. You have to be inspired and interested to want to engage with people. And if they're not interested and somewhat inspired by talking to you, then they're not going to hang around either. So there's a natural attrition to long-distance relationships. All of them. Not even long-distance relationships, even just fucking close relationships.
Yeah.
I'll bring this to you then. What about the fact that, say, long distance, like you might lose the connection of even knowing somebody in their trials and tribulations? Do you think that's important? When you're talking about your relationships with other people, does it need to be the highlights for you? Or do you legitimately want to know, like, hey, that person's been going through some stuff and I want to help them through it, or I want to be there for them? Or do you want to step back from that and go, you know what? Not my fight, not my dog, not my fight?
I would say legitimately all the relationships that we had, whether it be long-term or not, I want to be involved in some way and involved in making their lives better in some way, because they've all meant something to me. And I like to think that in some capacity they'll always be in my life, because distance really shouldn't be a prohibiting factor. If you want to help that relationship, you will do what it
needs to be done.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
If there is a level of distance and there is a lack of seeing people, then naturally things tail off. But I think for me, if that relationship is worth saving or worth maintaining, then it's important that they know that you're only at the end of the phone. I think the other thing that drives me with this one a little bit is the amount of effort that people put into returning that.
Yes.
So it's all you chasing and chasing and chasing, but if people don't do the same, reciprocate, and try to do that, then is it a relationship?
It's complicate.
Yes.
It's complicate if they don't reciprocate.
It's the value that you derive from relationship. It needs to be two-way.
It does.
Otherwise,
it's one way.
And I tell you what, actually, I'll bring this to a very recent scenario for me. we talk about the fact that like maybe you don't need to talk to your friends every 6 months or 12 months or whatever. But I think in actuality that when you don't, you're so far removed. And if that person, again, continually is not reaching out, then maybe you just need to let it go. So I think less of how do you keep them from dwindling over time and more like how do you make sure that the ones that you truly value are actually...
How do you filter the fucking chaff?
Yeah.
There's only so much you can push and push and push.
And years ago we met other people that we thought were going to be a really great connection, and it's always us. So now I've just kind of cut it to the point where I'm like, okay, it's done now. I'm not reaching out anymore.
It's the same with family, though, and I think family is incredibly difficult because you have a sort of sometimes a moral obligation. Not that you always necessarily need to see that.
Family gives you a reason to hang out with people you normally wouldn't associate with.
100%. And you can chase your family around the world and you can throw it back, and the difficulty is it doesn't always pan out with family.
True.
And the same is very true of any relationship that you're trying to maintain.
That's exactly true.
And I think, sometimes it's a very, very hard decision to cut family out of your life. Sometimes you have to make that decision, because if you're just wasting your life and your energy and it's causing you pain, it's better to take a step away. That doesn't mean, I think, that
you need to be malicious.
That you need to be malicious, but also that you can't pick that up at a later time. That you can't reinstate that, or that someone can be bumped back onto the list if you're all in agreement and that's something that's worth.
Wait, we're not supposed to be malicious?
Well, not always.
Oh,
I mean, sometimes
shit.
you just have to stand up in a hot tub and chuck people out. I mean,
And just wave your dick in their face and say, get the fuck out.
So Steph has said, and I've broken this up into two parts. Steph has said that she wants more information about like newbies and what they might not think about. But what I really like about Steph's comment here, because it involves Harry Potter, is where do I keep my sex toys in a club? Do I carry it around like in my hand like a Harry Potter wand, waiting for the magic moment, or do I break the moment and run down to my locker? And Steph is joining us in London City, and I'm really excited to meet her because she made a Harry Potter reference.
That helps quite a lot. Should we do some Harry Potter stuff while we're in London? Would you like that?
Oh, sorry, I got to cut that off.
Do you need to go to dinner?
Whoa. We're only allowed to say HP one more time before this is demonetized.
Oh gosh, then it might be demonetized, and then we won't make any money off of our billions of dollars of making money off doing a podcast. Horrible.
Well, do you know what, Steph, amazing person that's going to join the event? I will say that one thing that could be an amazing help in this situation is the Crave necklace that you can wear.
True.
That you don't have to stash away anywhere, and it is also pretty, and you can carry it around your person and then take it off and use it as a vibrator.
Wait, I have another option. Just stick a dildo in, carry it around.
It kind of does come back to the whole condoms and lube and everything else situation.
However, let's come back to that. Okay, so...
Because, of course, at some point you're going to be standing there talking to somebody in a bar and then move to the playroom, and what she's basically saying is, like, do I carry it around in this magic pouch, or do I break away and be like, you know what, I've got to go do something?
I mean, we've probably all got opinions about this, but you have a little pouch.
I enjoy the breakaway. Let's debate it.
Let's do it, right? Let's
He
have
has a
mini
pouch
debate.
that he typically condenses his very favourite little toys and a little tiny pot of liquid silk lube into a little bottle, puts them in a little pouch, and then gives me the pouch, because typically I always carry a small handbag with me.
Sometimes...
Very often I will carry it around in my bag.
This is more lies, more lies.
Not more lies, you're more
typically
lies.
what will happen is that we'll have two pouches.
Ah.
So when we've previously bought hot
They call those
toys,
ball sacks.
thanks, man. Thanks. We have two pouches. So one has some condoms and lube and your toy.
And this is a smallish pouch that can
pouch.
be compacted into a small handbag.
Yep. And then I'll have my own pouch, which has the cock ring that I tend to take with me, the lube and some condoms.
I have a perfect solution to this problem. Just do like we do in Australia, ride kangaroos everywhere. Right, you then have your pouch with you.
You're okay with carrying the pouch around?
Yeah.
We're in the realm of Harry Potter
I've
here.
often
I
got it
don't
out
mind.
and talked about it in front of crowds.
So I'm partial to having the pouch in a locker.
I don't mind a locker if there's one to be had, but I also don't really necessarily always accept there be a locker there. I don't want to assume there is.
There should be.
No, there doesn't have to.
Well, with the event that we've got, there will be a locker there.
And they also should be colour-coded and have...
Yes, we are aware of your colour-coded fascinations.
Yes, the locker porn. I'm partial to it. Okay, one, because I think it gives you a chance to break away a little bit and talk about things. And if you're single, it's probably a little bit different. Maybe you get to really think about what you want. In a couple circumstance, I think it's the ability to then break away. And you don't have to do it as a team. One person can go do it as well and get their stuff. The other thing is I like to refresh. So that gives me the opportunity. If I'm going to get my locker stuff, I also get to break into the bathroom and break out my like wipes and everything else, and I get to refresh.
Know there are a lot of air quotes being used during.
And I kind of like that refresh moment of just like, okay, I'm going to go down and get my stuff, and that might be as well like changing into lingerie. It could be getting my pouch. It could be then refreshing a little bit. I like that moment, and then
Could be fingering your own anus. I mean, whatever you do there, right?
But I do understand about the fact that people say it might break the flow.
Yeah, and I think I understand where she's coming from with the worry of things are going quite well and you don't want to then go, wait a minute, I need to go and get the magic bag of stuff. Sometimes it's like, oh, things are going really well, I don't want to break this up.
Sorry, we've established single lady, correct?
No, that's part of a couple.
Okay, sorry. I thought you discussed single lady.
No.
No, I said
As
if you were a single lady, it might be a little bit different.
If you're a single lady, people are going to wait for you.
Yeah.
I love the fact that she's actually bringing her sex toys along to the game, because that's also something that some people shy away from because they're like, oh no,
Seriously,
I better not do that.
Kangaroo.
I don't know where you're going with this.
Problem solved.
Pouch.
Just cram the pouch.
Oh yeah, got you. Now I understand. Every day's a school day with you, isn't it?
It is.
I've learned so much.
I know. Should we talk about suck farts
Oh
now
my
or
God,
later?
shall we do it?
What about you, Daryl? Pouch,
All
no
right,
pouch.
we'll wait for the suck part.
I think it just comes down to personal preference, but for me, it depends on what I'm wearing. But if I'm wearing anything, then I'll always have a bottle of lube and some condoms on me.
True, you'll have like maybe 2 condoms and like a small like
Just
sample
a micro
lube
sample
that you
bottle
break
of lube.
on the ground.
I have never, so I've been through many bottles of lube and I have never broken one on the ground. Yeah.
I didn't drop that lube.
Oh, didn't you?
Oh, you dropped it.
Well, fuck. Must have been me then.
Anyway.
Pish.
If you're using that as lube, that's a bad idea, my friend. Fish is not lube.
So
Tears are though, right?
I think it's easy as a guy generally. Certainly, most of the world you have the ability to be wearing something, right? And lingerie is not really a thing in most countries as well. So you've always got pockets available. So if you're traveling with a man, and just say, hey, dude, beside my lipstick, hair straightener, hair dryer, and all the other things you have stuffed in your pockets, just in case I need to go straighten some shit, and curl it and then straighten it again. Could you throw in a couple of condoms?
I think it says quite a lot if you turn up to the party with some sex toys that will
Me
help
too.
please somebody.
Oh, I agree.
It's like, hey, I brought this stuff. Like, this is cool. If you want to play with it, it's there. And I've thought about this.
So I got a question for the guys in the room then. So let's now think about the fact that this is Steph asking. So say Steph and her partner have met you and she's like...
They'll never be back.
No, like you're there with Mrs. H and I'm there with you, much to your chagrin. And Steph is like, hold on a second, we're going to move to play. I'm going to go down to the lockers for a moment. I'll be right back up. Would you have a problem with that? Yes, no?
No, I'll be like, I'm going to
it'd
take
be
this
great.
opportunity to have a wee now.
And maybe I'll go and replenish the drinks. We
To
all
that
have a role to
fucking
play.
teamwork.
Well, no, hang on. We could
good.
actually, we could minimise this.
With
because
our
we've got
powers
one
combined.
person, we've got one person who needs a wee. We got somebody else who's
Drinks duty.
We could just join you two
Divide and
together.
conquer.
He could replenish the drinks.
In my new role as Jesus, I'll be able to turn the water into wine.
I can turn urine into urine.
So what we're saying for Steph is that it's okay to, quote unquote, break.
I can go and get your stuff from a locker if there's a locker.
I think it's fine.
Is there a way to do it more sexier?
Yes, ride a fucking kangaroo. How many times do I have to say this?
Is there a way for a woman to be more like seductive about I'm just going to go to the locker and like freshen up for you kind of deal?
Well, would it not be really sexy to say, I have some stuff I want to show you and I have some stuff that would enhance our play. I'll be right back. Or why don't you wait for me here or wherever it is you've decided to be?
I think it's.
Or go and get a playroom.
Yeah.
Maybe. Like, why don't you go and find a playroom
Then you need
for
to
us?
work out the special knock for the playroom.
Yeah.
Like,
You're
and I will be
complicating
right
things
back.
now.
the sound of the squidgy head of a penis as you walk up to the playroom door. That
If the head of your penis is squidgy, then we have problems. I don't know why it was squidgy.
heads of penises are always squidgy.
Why would it be squidgy? Right?
Always-
that
they're
like,
always
makes it
squidgy.
feel like Play-Doh.
No, because just back from the head is where the erectile tissue lives. It doesn't go all the way to the tip, so the head of the penis is always squidgy.
Other lectures will be available during our play event at Le Boudoir on the 24th of September.
Kate,
Come
what's the
join us
next
for a night of
question,
the glitter.
please?
I believe we have space for no more questions and that we should probably round up at this stage.
Oh, but come on, kangaroo. We all know it's true.
I don't think there's anything wrong with going, I just need to grab some stuff or I need to do X. It's
Actually,
just having the
fine.
confidence to do it, I think.
And you're right, because I think we put so much pressure on ourselves that like that's going to be a really big to-do, and in actual fact the person's going to be like, cool.
Can I add a more importantly?
What?
More importantly, if they're going to fuck off whilst you're going to get sex toys, condoms and lube, they're probably fucking arseats anyway, and you don't want to fuck them. So I'm going to say, best option here, 1, ride a kangaroo if you can get one. Just come speak to some Australians. And 2,
Conga, sexy conga to the locker room.
Exactly. And 2, this is the end of the podcast.
No, because suck farts.
No.
Oh, so we need to get back into suck
We
farts.
have to cover suck farts.
We're not doing it.
It's not a sock fart, it's a suck fart.
Yeah, no, a sock fart's a totally different thing. That's the only way you can get
These
them
are
to
on 4
lie.
tracks, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Hey, so guys, thank you so much for listening to the Wanderlust Swingers podcast. We've been joined by Mr. and Mrs. H from the Bedhoppers podcast. Mr. H, where can they find you?
You can find us at bedhoppers.co.uk. Thanks to Kate badgering me into getting the website.
You can find us at suckfart.com.
And you can find Mrs. H's recent blog post live on their website. Delightful. Took her 3 months to produce it, but it is a worth read.
1 second, I'll come back to you guys with suckfart.com in a second.
I don't think we're going to be able to cut out the suck fart bit. We're going to hear it
everywhere.
It's everywhere. So we're so sorry.
Yeah.
We're just We're
apologetic. But thank you for everyone who sent us in questions.
Guys, in your holier than thou, actually, you can fuck right off because I've learned some stuff this weekend from Daryl.
Suckfart.com is not registered.
Right, get on there.
God.
It's yours for taking.
Thank you very much for listening to the episode today, guys. Please, if you haven't listened to part 1, do go over to the Bedhoppers podcast and listen to that. Questions and answers from mostly the people that are coming to the London event.
Unbelievable.
The important part is, despite what these two idiots are saying, is that if you fancy coming to Le Boudoir, there you go, Kate.
Wouldn't it be amazing if they were this aggressive when they were pursuing somebody?
September 24th. We'd love to see you in London City. Please come out and join us, and you can hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, or our podcast. Thank you so much for listening.
Or suckfart.com.
Do you know what? People don't even know what the suck fart's about now.